Hello, everyone. My name is Jordan Nnabugwu, and I'll be talking to you today about server-driven UI. So our agenda for today is introduction, mainly the challenge, the evolution of UI rendering, and then we're going to talk about like Nubank, some SDUI solutions, and then we'll end with best practices and implementation strategy. So a little intro into who I am. I was born in Washington, D.C., actually the same hospital as Duke Ellington. There's me and my mom right there. And I graduated from the illustrious Morgan State University. Um, I grew up in both St. Petersburg, Florida, which is the flag at the bottom, and Baltimore, Maryland, which is the flag up top, Maryland's flag. And in my spare time, I like to read One Piece. So yeah, heard a woo in the back, love that. Um, so intro into my career background. So like I said before, I did electrical engineering at Morgan State University. I did 2 years of hardware engineering, both at Intel and at Galtronics. And I spent the last 4 years working as a mobile software developer between a company called Whisker and doing open source contributions at Open Food Facts before I started this last April at Very Good Ventures. So let's take a step back and dig into the process right now. Let's imagine you have 2 to 3 UI paywalls that you want to like test. Like how would you go about that? Would you one create like a custom A/B testing infrastructure? Would you use manual analytics? Or would you use something that Revenue Cat actually has, which is like integration with A/B testing, so that you can actually like test your paywalls without actually posting them onto the app store and doing that from the back end. So the reason why I bring up this challenge is us being in the mobile space, we understand the challenge of mobile release friction, that it's like a that's a bottleneck. The app store approval process kind of takes like 1 to 2 weeks at the most, like at the very like easiest like 5 days. And then this can even like happen for just small UI tweaks. And then also on the business end, seasonal promotions need to be planned like weeks and months in advance to get effectiveness. And you can't really compete with your competition quickly because of that mobile release strategy. And then personalization, it's hard to do because it takes multiple flavors of an app to actually create. The solution, let the server drive the conversation. This eliminates the need of basically mobile development on like front end development, and just focuses on like the back end developers driving the conversation for servers. You can react to competitors in hours, not months, and then you have like a recommendation for you page actually based off the data that you have in the server. So what is server driven UI? So if you look at this picture, basically what the back end does is it sends information to the front end of like how your stack is going to look like. Columns, buttons, and then the client consumes and then shows a picture of that. So SDUI is not a new concept. It's actually been implemented since the beginning of modern web with server-side rendering, where basically at the same thing, the server sends pages, HTML pages to the client, and the client renders them. Now with modern frameworks like Node.js and React Native that are heavy client side, they're heavy client reliant and doing a lot of the work on the client side, that changes things. But it all started with server-driven UI with mobile, not with web. And let's go into the history of that. So in the early 2000s, every page was kind of like generated with HTML and simple server. The server renders everything. And then in the 2010s, React and Node.js changed everything and became more client focused. Now in the 2000 in this decade, the pendulum is kind of swinging back because of performance issues, and SEO problems, and also client complexity. So let's look at a success story of Nubank. So Nubank has over 10 million users in South America and 2,000 engineers. And they don't want to have like a bottleneck of the service of building development. So their framework is actually built on Flutter and Clojure. Their framework is like a back-end driven content, which is basically like Lego blocks that show you how to actually like build the content. And this business impact for it allows for continuous deliverability, so no app store dependency, rapid iteration, bug fixings, and everything like that. And then team autonomy. So most of Nubank's developers are not Flutter developers, but mainly backend developers that use the Clojure architecture. So the last 20 years, the server-driven development wasn't the problem. It was our technical limitations that were. And now that those limitations are gone, many adopters are going back to server-driven approaches. So we're going to talk about three server-driven UI frameworks. Remote, RFW stands for Remote Flutter Web Widgets. And then Swap is actually like a Dart layer onto remote-driven, remote Flutter widgets. And then Stack is its own framework that's JSON-based. Personally, Stack is my favorite, but we'll get into that. And all of them lead to basically dynamic UI, dynamic mobile UI. So these are some apps that I built, and this like on my left, you can see the code for it. So for remote Flutter widgets, basically it's like a text template, and the cons of this are basically you don't have like an IDE that tells you the error messages that you get. You kind of see the error messages once you run them. And then you can see like the result on the right. And then now we'll go into Swap. So Swap's more Dart, like as a Flutter developer, is more Dart friendly because it uses Dart. And here's a hero page that you can see. And all these are being run on a server. And then for my favorite, personal favorite, I would say Stack. So Stack is basically like a JSON solution, and it's way more readable. I personally think so. And it shows the layout of your Flutter page, and it gets rendered in from Flutter. And how these stack up against each other is, I would say, the learning curve for the remote Flutter widgets is pretty high, just because you don't have like an IDE to telling you what's wrong and what's right. I would say the personal on like the developer experience, I didn't really like. Swap was a little bit better, but like I said, like Stack was like excellent for me, just because like I've worked with JSON before. So where do we go from here? So the main time to use SDUI is not all the time, but when you have user customizable content, basically like if you can think of like a dashboard for a banking system that already has data processed, not necessarily for animations or things of that nature, because like you kind of want your server, with server-driven UI, you want to keep your server the one doing the thinking, and just like the front end just doing the rendering. Like that's pretty much it. And you kind of want to, for architectural approaches, you want to have like a mix of static and dynamic widgets, and you don't want your whole app to be in server-driven UI. So that's it. This is my links to my LinkedIn and my X, if you want to follow. Any questions? Yeah. Yeah.
So for customized widgets, something that's like super custom that has a lot of inputs and outputs, do you define those things up front and then it like delivers it to you and builds the widget, or do I have to do something special for the in between?
So in personal, so like when working with BGV and like working on like client projects, they made their own customizable SDUI package um, that solved that issue. I'm not sure if like Stack is like available to do customizable widgets now, but I know like companies like Nubank and the other company that I was working with VGV, they made their own SDUI package to solve that issue.
Okay, so these are like delivering containers, padding widgets, and things like that. That's how it's driving
Oh,
it.
can you?
These these are delivering like containers and padding widgets and built-in things to Flutter
Yes.
by default. Got it.
Yes. Okay.
Okay. So, quick question: are these remote widgets supposed to be as dumb as possible? Like, there's not supposed to be any additional like logic. Well, I mean, when you parse them, imagine you parse something that would react to button clicks, for example. Like, you would have to handle the interactions, the user interactions on the client end.
Yeah, I would handle the user interactions on the client end. Like, you want to think of you're reacting to like your server is just like your front end is like reacting to your server data. Like think like a banking app or something like that, like or a dashboard. Like you're not like clicking things on a dashboard. Like that's like for another page, and that's kind of like the reason why you're not gonna make your whole app SDUI, just like parts and pieces of it.
Right. And then, like, what happens if the actual widget itself is not it's only focused on whatever Flutter provides, right? Nothing customizable beyond the scope. Like, you can't, like, wire it up to third party widgets, third party dependency widgets.
And when you say third party like dependable widgets,
Like, let's say if you create a custom implementation based on custom stateless, custom stateful that have their own implementations. Like, it's not smart enough to dynamically load that widget if it can't find it in the it's only limited to what's provided by Flutter out of the box, correct?
yes, yeah, I would say so. It's pretty bare bones, and I again like I think that's the reason why like companies kind of make their own SDUI. Like SDUI is kind of like a framework. You should I kind of think of it as like a framework of thinking instead of like a package to rely on. Like Stack was like kind of easy, but I had to like make it as dumb as possible. Like just like you saw the graphics that I like put up on here instead of like a full-fledged like application. Okay. All right. Thank you, everyone.